Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle. The Burgundy Zone is a part of the Frederick Podcast Network. You can find out more by going to www.listenfrederick.com. My two co-hosts, Michael Reed and Michael Hall, will be joining me here at some point. I don't know exactly when, but it will transpire at some point. I do know that. But we are rejoined from Pro Football Focus's own Nick Akridge, who covers the Commanders. Thank you so much for joining me tonight, sir. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. And the reason why I had you on here is because last week was the first look at the rookie class for the Washington Commanders, Emmanuel Forbes, Ricky Stromberg, and others. But also it was our first look at Eric Bieniemy kind of on the field. So I want to get your thoughts of what was your immediate, just simple thoughts from the first look at the guys.
Yeah, man, it's just fun to see. It's just always fun to see them get back out on the field, and you start to finally, smell football and think football, and it's slowly coming back. But there's still a long way to go. I mean, it's very, very early, but no, it's kind of neat to just see him on the field in Commander's gear.
Yeah, and speaking of, Emmanuel Forbes had a pick in the first week for the rookie minicamp, and obviously going against guys that aren't on the pro level, so it's not like something you could really hang your hat on. But I want to ask you about Emmanuel Forbes, Nick, because you spend a lot of time watching film. A lot of people have talked about the weight, and it's a huge concern with Emmanuel Forbes being floating around 170 pounds. What do you make of his weight? Do you think that the cornerback position is kind of transitioning because weight is not that much of a concern anymore?
Yeah, I'm not really worried about his weight at all. I mean, he's already starting to make me kind of eat my words. I was more worried about his ball hawking label that we're kind of giving him.
Mm.
Just because if you watch the film, I noted that like six or I think five of the six interceptions he had, you could say that he was beat on them. And now when the ball's in the air, he's making great plays to, catch it and then take it to the end zone. You can't teach that sort of stuff. So hopefully he keeps making me eat my words, and I continue to be wrong about this. But no, I'm not concerned about his weight. I was more concerned about his actual play. I mean, I think his weight is he's kind of on the slim side for sure, but I'm not concerned about it. He's not afraid to throw his body in there. I think you more need to worry about his technique when it comes to tackling, not when because he literally just throws his body, doesn't wrap up at all, which is that's something. That's definitely something. But no, the weight is not the concern for me. It's the actual technique and how that's going to translate.
Well, one of my biggest things I've said throughout this process when people brought up the weight thing is I don't really care about the weight because, against Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, that's not going to help you, the weight, so to speak. But with Emmanuel Forbes and his playmaking ability, one thing I've said in this rookie year, let's not harp on those turnovers, right? Like, I don't want to put those expectations on him. I don't want him being pissed at himself by week 4 that he doesn't have a turnover, right? But what I'm looking for is the lockdown corner, just being able to play as wide receiver. Based on what you saw on film, do you kind of see that?
Yeah, no, there are definitely some plays where I think he fits this team well. I think he fits the kind of scheme that they want to play, where you can kind of have him play off and then just read and react, like we saw on that pick in rookie camp, where he's just kind of sitting back, reading, reacting, and then jumping the ball. That's where I think he's at his best. He gets pretty jumpy when he's playing some man. You can definitely kind of take advantage of his double moves on him and stuff like that. But that's a lot of corners. They're just over aggressive. But I'd rather have my corners be over aggressive than less aggressive and try to teach that. So yeah, no, it's going to be interesting. Corners are funky. I mean, yeah, a lot of times you like to look at picks and think, oh yeah, he's having a great year. But picks are not a great way to really look at corners. I know it's weird to say, but a lot of it is fluky. I mean, he is literally his last year was Trayvon Diggs, like
What did I say, Stephon?
it's yeah. But I got confused too for a second. No. It was very Trayvon Diggs, like where it's boom or bust. It's either he's getting whooped on a double move or he's taking it to the house for some weird reason. The ball just finds him, and if you can get that in the NFL, that'd be awesome. But no, that's not the sort of stuff that really sticks. It's the kind of technique of him playing off coverage, him playing man coverage, all that sort of stuff. That's what you really looking for more so than the picks.
Yeah, now this second round pick really took me by surprise just based on how I thought maybe things would go with structuring in this draft position. But Quan Martin quickly became my favorite of this draft class, not because only because he wore 21, but just because of the play on the field. Talk to me about Quan Martin because earlier I got to watch Kendall Smith, number 7, who plays safety for Illinois, and
Hmm.
again Quan Martin is just popping off at the screen. We weren't able to see him last week because he was out with a family emergency. What have you seen from Quan Martin? What are your expectations for him? Do you think he's going to get a lot of starting time?
I think so, because he's so versatile. I mean, if you're when you're watching the Illinois film, I think the hardest part is trying to figure out where in the hell he is. Because you don't know where he's lined up. You don't
Right.
know if he's in the slot. You don't know if he's out wide or deep safety in the box. He's everywhere. He can literally play everywhere, and he can play it effectively. You're obviously not going to play him outside, but you can use that to kind of scheme your way into some creative defenses. Where if you want to put him outside and then rotate him to a deep half or stuff like that, where you can have him follow a man and then rotate to zone and stuff like that is very important for Del Rio to kind of just use. And I think he fills a very big hole with that slot corner sort of nickel role. But yeah, no, I didn't know anything about him. I didn't really know anything about any of these guys before, and it's kind of nice to go into it with like you don't have any expectations of who you want them to take, and they just take them, and then you figure out if you like it afterwards.
Right.
So then that way you don't get mad if it's like, oh, it's a reach, but because I don't really know if it's a reach or not. So
Right.
no,
When I
that was
was
a fun one. That was a fun one to study for sure, is because he can play everywhere and he can play it really well.
Yeah, not only that, and the football instincts, the smart show off on film, but then you look at his measurables. At the
Hmm.
11-1 broad jump, the 44-inch
Yeah,
vertical, and you see it on film, the explosiveness. I'm really excited to see what Quan Martin brings. Hopefully, he's able to get back this week and get to work
yeah.
right away.
And
But
he's a guy just like Forbes where you want him playing off. Like you want
yep.
him playing off, you want him reading, reacting because his man coverage reps are it's a work in progress. He is super physical. He wants to just try to bully everyone at the top of the routes, and it turns out not so well. But when he can play off and read and react, like you said, that burst just shows up on film. It's fun to watch.
It seems to be a reoccurring thing with all those Illinois defensive backs is
I don't know
aggressiveness.
how they do it, man. Illinois is not a good football team, but they just that Illinois secondary this past year was incredible. I mean, it's
Disgusting.
just wild.
Yeah, Kendall Smith even made a play himself that was amazing, and he just plays purely free safety for them.
Yep.
But my next question for you: they add a big hog on the offensive line in the third round. He played center at Arkansas and Ricky Stromberg. But I want to get your opinion. Do you think that they should start him at guard? Because the big question is with Nick Gates, because they brought him in here. They've said that he's the center, but Ricky Stromberg is very good. That's where he played and is natural at in college. What would you do with Ricky?
I like him at center. I don't think you move him off of that. I think if you start to kind of change people's positions and what they're best at from an early start, I think it kind of really messes with them. And we kind of saw that with Sam Cosmi last year, where you're moving him from tackle to guard to right tackle, left tackle, guard, and all these sort of things. And it's just messing with him, and as he can't get comfortable with it, I think you stick with the plan. I'm a huge fan of this pick. I didn't know what to expect, but when you get a 4-year starter at center in the SEC, that's pretty impressive. So, no, I'm a huge fan of him. His athleticism is again off the charts. Like I think he's a freak athlete when it comes to you can just watch him climb to the second level. His get off is great. He's super smart. There's very few stunts and exchanges that he did not that he messed up. There's just very little, and his eyes are quick. Yeah, I'm just a huge fan. I keep saying it like I feel like 5 or 6 years down the road, you could look at this being the best pick of the draft. I just think he's going to be. I think his floor is just a solid starting center in this NFL, and I know that's kind of crazy to say for a third round center, but yeah, I was a huge fan of him.
Yeah, and in defense of Emmanuel Forbes as well, a lot of people brought up the weight, right? And the one thing you could say is he played in the SEC for 3 seasons and
Right.
didn't have an injury concern. I think it's okay to go in it with confidence, right? And the same thing with Ricky Stromberg. He's almost the SEC version of John Michael Schmitz, where he just does everything correct,
Yeah.
and he's a really smart young man. So I'm really happy about that pick. I agree with you that he could be possibly the steal there. But my next question for you, the undrafted free agents. These are guys that don't come in with all the glamour, all the fame. They come in, just get to work. Are there some names that have piqued your interest at all?
I think the big one is Casimir Allen, and that's what everyone's kind of
Have
been talking about.
have
Just
you
because you
watched
can,
have you watched Mitchell Tinsley at all? I watched him briefly
no,
today.
I haven't yet.
It's pretty incredible the stuff that I saw. Very physical.
I'll get to that then. I like that. I mean, I think Casimir Allen is a guy that you can just kind of see him getting the ball in kind of weird ways, and maybe he makes an impact that way. But I try not to get too invested in undrafted free agents because it usually doesn't turn out too well for him. But I think that's a name that might be sticking around.
And James Harrison is somewhere saying, "How dare you?"
I don't want him. I don't want him anywhere near me after I said that.
Absolutely. Now,
Terrifying individual.
My next question for you: it has been talked about and rumored that Eric Bieniemy is trying to bring his Kansas City offense over to Washington. And I think it's obvious that we don't have Patrick Mahomes here. We don't have Travis Kelce, which is fine. But my question to you, given with what is here, do you think it's going to be very difficult for EB to implement that Kansas City offense based on what weapons he does have?
No, I don't think so. I think you can see how that offense would translate. I think they were great at just kind of getting mismatches and with a guy like Travis Kelce, and when they had Tyreek Hill, and just teams having to defend both of them just was a nightmare. And then even when Tyreek Hill leaves, he was still able to kind of manufacture touches for Kelce, and obviously you have Mahomes working his magic. But I think the big thing will always be with any offensive coordinator is the quarterback position. If you get Sam Howell and he turns into a good quarterback, the offense is going to look incredible. But you see him struggling, we'll start seeing some people question the offense and all that sort of stuff. But a lot of times it's about the process with the offensive coordinator, not really the results. But it's always about that quarterback.
It's always about that quarterback, and I've always said
every time
to get your franchise quarterback, you got to get lucky. I don't know if Washington has gotten lucky because it's very rarely that it does, but it's always possible. Next question for you. You at PFF, obviously, statistics are huge, obviously, for Pro Football Focus. What is the most important statistical category that Washington has to improve on from last year? Obviously, 2 years ago, on third down on defense, they were one of the worst in the league. They moved up to number 1 in the league. A lot of credit to this defensive staff for getting them there. What is, for this year, what is that one statistical category, Nick?
If I won't take the easy answer and say quarterback, because I just kind of said that, but it's quarterback first, and there's a huge gap between everything else. And then I would say O-line. I think it's kind of getting a set 5, just kind of getting back to that solid offensive line play that we saw in years past. I think it's enough with shuffling all the offensive line, and a lot of that had to do with injuries. I think you can just try to hopefully get 5 healthy guys up there, and you can see it really be a successful offensive line again. But I think that after quarterback is the biggest thing that needs to be really turned around. Because, a lot of times Heineke and everyone didn't really have a chance. Like, there was not much of a chance for them to really do anything. And if you want to see how Sam Howell progressed, you need an offensive line. You need him to be able to have some time and see how he does with full field progressions and all that sort of stuff.
And that's what I was trying to argue with people during the season. They were trying to say Carson Wentz didn't have the protection that Heineke had. Oh, okay. Keep saying that.
Yeah.
But to wrap this up, Nick, I only have a couple more questions for you, sir. You just briefly talked about the O-line, so I'm going to put you on the spot. What is your projection for the starting offensive line?
We'll go with the easy ones, Leno at left.
Okay.
And then I'll get Cosme on the right tackle. And then, Jesus, I think you got to go Norwell left guard, and then I think you have a mix. Yeah. They paid him the big bucks. There were some rough moments for him last year for sure, but he was by far the biggest problem on that offensive line. The biggest problem last year was center and right guard. That was the biggest issue, and then that kind of translated into right tackle.
I got you. The only reason I said that is because everyone's consensus is that him and Trey Turner are split.
That could be. And I could be completely off base here. It is still May.
I like the idea of it, Nick. I'm not going to lie to you. He's a proven vet, and you have the backups in there that you feel good and confident with them.
Mm-hmm. And I would say I really want to put Stromberg at center and then Gates at right guard.
I like that. No Wiley?
Yeah, I think that's what I would go with. Oh, right. I forgot. I was like, why did you
were you thinking of Wiley when you said Norwell?
No, I was thinking of Wiley for Cosme at right tackle. That's who I.
Oh, okay.
That's who I think of. I was like, why were you so shocked at Sam Cosme? I was like, who else would it be? And then I forgot that.
That's
again, it's May, so
I got you. Now, Nick, I only have 2 more questions for you, so I'm not going to pump you too much harder here, giggity. But I saw a ranking last week. I forget exactly. I think it was Jeff Schwartz. I cannot remember exactly, but he had the Washington's defensive line ranked 5th. He didn't even have Fedarian Mathis listed in the depth chart, so to speak. I think the third defensive tackle on the depth chart that he supplied was Abdullah, and John Ridgway was fourth. Do you agree with that ranking with the fifth best? Because obviously you spend a lot of time watching film, and obviously you follow other national PFF guys. What do you think the consensus is there?
I think if you take them out of the top five at all, I think you're crazy. I think anywhere within that top five, I think you can make arguments for any of those teams. I mean,
Okay.
just within this division, it's insane. The Giants are great. The Eagles have a great one. I think again, when you're in that top five, I think it's just kind of what you prefer and what other people prefer. I'm always going to put them up there towards the top just because I have got a little bias, obviously.
Right.
But no, I think as long as they're in that top five, I don't think you can complain. I think the rest just kind of comes down to preference.
I got you, and I appreciate you for that. The last question I have for you, we've got to bring it to ownership. Just got announced on Friday that looks like Washington is now 100% sold to Josh Harrison Group. It's magic, baby. We got some really good stuff going on here in DC, Nick. But my question for you is, what are a list of wants for you for ownership? Like just based on importance. If you were to say the most important things that you need the new ownership group to come in and just focus on, not change necessarily, but focus on.
I would say just stay out of the football part. Just stay away. Don't meddle. Don't do any of that. Hire the right guys and let them do what you need them to do. Just stay away. Stay in your press box and just watch the games and react like the fans do. I think that's just kind of the biggest thing for me. And just kind of keep the off the field stuff a little bit quieter. That would be great. Tired of having every week there's a new scandal. So hopefully we kind of maybe just push that to every couple months, maybe not every week.
I know,
but
it's a low bar, Nick.
It is a very low bar. Friday was a great day. I was on the golf course. I got the news. And
where'd you play at?
And Bull Run.
Oh,
great
Bull Run.
Course.
I've heard really good things.
Love
about
that
Bull
course. Run. I shot exactly 100, so I'm pretty happy about that. It was just a great day. Friday was great.
As I always tell people, man, don't count your strokes until what you should be counting is how many golf balls you lose. And when you are getting into a single hand basis, when you're only losing less than 5, then you can start counting your score, and then you'll be less mad at yourself when you leave the course.
No, that's fair. But there was no way I was getting mad after that news on Friday. So
there you go.
Just swinging freely at that point.
I should have done the same thing, Nick. I really should have.
Yeah.
I can't thank you enough, brother, for coming on here and being able to talk to us about some football here. Appreciate your time as always, brother. And until next time, I'll see you then.
Yep. See ya.
Thanks, Nick. All right, everybody. We just spoke with the man, Mr. Nick Akridge from PFF. This is my dude. Absolutely loved his analysis. I don't know what's going on with my co-host, so I just want to apologize to you all now. You're going to have to listen to my voice solely, probably for the next 10 minutes or so. So I really do. I'm sorry for you guys for that, but let's get this rolling. All right, I want to go to our fan questions before we are joined by our next guest. And this one is from the Colonel. It's a fantastic question. It appears the number one priority, based on fan opinion, is to rename the Commanders. How awesome would it be to rename the team, the Redskins, with an even more controversial logo, perhaps of Indians scalping a trooper? Do you think that would rile up the fan base? I don't think we need to go to that drastic measures, Colonel, but I do think it's ridiculous that we are getting back and rehashing this. I tried explaining it to my wife, actually, when we were walking earlier. When you saw the polls before the name change, it was always Red Wolves, Red Wolves, Red Wolves. That's what was dominating. That's what was winning. People like me were very proud to see that the Commanders were chosen, a militaristic kind of name to really be proud of and have an actual good guideline for how to run an organization. I think the military is a great thing to implement, to really idolize and go after and strive for. What I was trying to explain to her is these Red Wolves people always controlled the polls. And so now is their ability to go back and try to reverse that. And so that's what they're trying to do with these polls. And I said it back then, a couple years ago, I sounded like a crazy conspiracy theorist. I was weirded out by the Red Wolf movement. As soon as it started, I said, this is sketchy. These are a bunch of brand new accounts pushing only the name, and they don't really care about football. This is weird to me. This sort of thing is the same exact scenario for me. It weirds me out that people care so much about it. Look, and I understand we have a very deep attachment to this name, but this is life, and this is like a normal life occurrence. You have to be able to build off of that. You have to grow. I'm sorry it happens, but it is what it is. Do we really want to make ourselves an even more of an embarrassment by going through this name change again. Like, haven't we gone through enough? We've gone through 20 years, and we ended it in probably the most toxic, controversial, just a hurricane of just dysfunction, and we want to just go back to what we just did a year ago and redo it all over again? No. We've gone through enough for 20 years, man. Can we please just move on and go away from all this hoopla, this nonsense off the field? Could we just strictly focus on football? I've been waiting for 3 years just to strictly focus on football. And I love this organization because it gives us a lot of ammunition, right? And being able to talk about it on the show. But at some point, you just want to talk football. And like, look, this is great and all, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's just a football team. It's just a name. And I don't want to have to go through all of that nonsense again. I'm sorry, man. I really don't. And I do think that Colonel brings up a great point by making it even more crazy so we can just leave it all behind at this point, because I think we're all done with it. And I especially am. Now, this next question is from First Real OG in the Washington Command Center. Appreciate you, brother. His question is, Pete Carroll, this is a really long one, guys, so bear with me. Pete Carroll went 7-9 his first 2 seasons on a team that was only 2 seasons removed from a 5 years stretch of playoff runs with a Super Bowl trip mixed in. Ron was one of 5 coaches hired in 2020. 2 have already been fired. They were brought in at the height of the pandemic, and not only didn't they receive a 2-week head start to the offseason programs the NFL usually affords to new coaches, but the whole league had the offseason programs greatly reduced, along with preseason games being canceled, but none of them came into a situation nearly as bad as Ron's. On top of that, he had to battle cancer that season and still somehow managed to squeak us into the playoffs with a 7-9 record. So his question is, oh my goodness, this is a long one. My questions are, do you think the comparison to Pete in Seattle are warranted? Do you think we can take a 2012 Seattle level jump, and even if it's not quite there, do you think Ron deserved Josh Harris's normal 2-year tryout so that Ron could go into next season without the albatross of Snyder around his neck and Josh Harris's full financial support in free agency? Thank you, OG. I'm sorry, guys. That was a very, very long one. But yes, I do think that the comparison is warranted. And we can talk about the Super Bowl run, and I get it. But there is consistencies there, to his point. You're made the playoffs with a losing record in a bad division, and you build on that. That's what I've been seeing for the past 3 years. You build on that. Well, what was here before Ron? Can we answer that question? Were you really proud of how we played on primetime? Were you really proud of how Scott McCloughan getting thrown under the bus and us being a joke just every offseason? Every time we had hope, it was ripped away from us. And yes, things aren't exciting right now, but it blows my mind when we get into these discussions about Ron. And is it perfect? No, but it's what we needed. And I do think the comparison is good, and I do think that Ron deserves the 2-year tryout. And I think that based on how things go, let's say things go terribly wrong. Just catastrophe after catastrophe this season. Things blow up. Sam Howell looks horrible. Jacoby Brissett comes in. He gets hurt. We have to go to Grom to play and start for us, which is, the thought of it just makes me, sick. But let's just say that happens. Then, yeah, we could talk about possibly something happening because the Harris group wants to start fresh, right? Because that would make sense. But if things are okay, if things are good, if they are building, if they're actually taking the next step, if they're winning games early, without a doubt, Ron deserves the 2 years. And I think the cancer year, I think you brought up, OG, is perfect. I know people that call out of work because their butt is running. Like who call out of work because they're sneezing or something, or their stomach hurts. This dude got cancer and still showed up to work every day. You know how many people would have signed that deal with Snyder for all that money, gotten cancer, and said, I'm sorry, dude, I just can't do it. Knowing that they have to pay you regardless, guaranteed, right? Guaranteed money in that. He could have walked away. Instead, he stayed here. And I think that loyalty does deserve a lot of credit, in my personal opinion. And I think that respect is deserved on Ron Rivera's behalf. So I do think that Harrison Group, I hope that they come in with the right mindset and saying, look, you're not perfect, but you have to prove it to us. If you want these guys, that your staff that you believe in, that you brought in here, you hired and you trusted, they have to prove it to us that they're going to be a part of this organization. Just like Ron talks about all the time, at competition at defensive end, at quarterback, at running back, at wide receiver. Same thing is happening to Ron right now by ownership. And I'm sure Ron is literally sitting there saying, I love that opportunity. At least give me that chance to prove it to you. And I think that is going to go a long way with Ron Rivera and company, especially this football team. I think the view of Ron Rivera is very different on that football team than it is in the fan base. And those guys are riled up and ready to go to support their head coach, to be perfectly honest with you. Now, let's move on to our next question. This is from Scott Hartley in the UK. Oi! Sorry if I missed it. You haven't, Scott. You're good. You're right on time, dude. You're more on time than Reed and Hall are at this point, but it's cool. If I missed it, I'm sorry. Do you see any further free agency moves, or are we waiting until the post-1 June cuts? I think we are waiting for the cuts. I do think that some massaging is probably going out. They want to see how these guys work. If we think back to when Cosme was drafted, right, Scott? Morgan Moses wasn't released right away, right? They saw how Sam Cosme was in May, and they felt comfortable with him at right tackle. After May, after that June 1st, that's when they let go of Morgan. And so I think that's when you're probably going to be expecting some moves. We never know who's going to come and who's going to be available in the NFL at any given time. I mean, you guys remember that Deshaun Jackson thing, right? Like, all the craziest stuff does happen in the NFL. So, and in moments' notice, somebody could be brought on here that could help this football team. But thank goodness we are blessed here today as we're watching Anthony Armstrong rocking out with himself as he vibing out. I see you, bro. I see. What's up, man? How you doing, Anthony?
I'm good, man. How you?
I'm doing great. The co-hosts aren't here yet, so I've gone the whole episode solo here. So I really, everyone listening and myself, appreciate you for joining me. So there's a different voice in the room, brother. How you doing?
Oh, there we go. And I just figured out how to flip the screen.
There you go.
Look at y'all catching the live updates. I don't
Look
even know
at
how
you.
to save it, but whatever.
How you doing,
There
Anthony?
we go. I'm good, man. I'm good. You know, the day is good. Day is great. It's been a solid week. You know, I mean, can't really complain.
Did something big
Getting
happen
some-
last week?
Man, I think the Byron Nelson was going on down the road, just down the street, and I got invited to it, and I didn't go. But I was like, I'm gonna be, well, you know, I'm practicing a little bit of delayed gratification.
I got you.
Okay, I'm practicing that, so that means like I'm saying, hey, you know, if I gotta wait until the weekend or next week to just before I make a decision to do something. So it's worked out pretty well. Got a good deal on a computer like that.
There you go. My little brother's got a new desktop. But Anthony, I want to bring this back to you because I do want to ask you a question, sir. You went through the trenches in order to get your NFL opportunity. These undrafted free agents have walked in here, and the one name that we keep hearing is Kaz Allen from UCLA, running back, returner, wide receiver guy. And also Mitchell Tinsley is another name at wide receiver. Have you looked at any of these guys? Do you find them intriguing?
You know, I did see the Kaz Allen name being dropped a lot, you know, especially by the head coach early on. You know, that's big. That's high praise. So I definitely want to go back and look at more of his tape. And have been waiting to see different updates kind of filter. I know there'll be some tape as I go dive into Twitter, but just off the jump, knowing that the head coach has, I'm gonna say, has your back by mentioning you, you know, by name and saying that he's gotten our attention.
It's better than him not knowing your name.
That's a fact. That is a fact because I mean, shoot, at this point, I mean, there's so many bodies, but now that they've already penciled you in at what they think you can do, and now you really get to showcase that and make sure that you make them look right. So I'm intrigued for sure. I hadn't seen much about the Tinsley kid though.
I just started watching him today, and I'm very, very intrigued. A deep threat, good route runner. I think you'd be really impressed with him. But I wanted to get your opinion on this, Anthony. You played wide receiver in the pros. You kind of know how it goes more so than me or anybody most likely watching. But Emmanuel Forbes, his weight has been brought up a lot. He's floating around 170 pounds. Do you put all that much stock into it as a former wide receiver? Do you think that weight argument is overblown?
Yeah, it's something that you don't really worry about. I mean, would you like him to be, maybe 10 pounds heavier? Sure. I think that's a ideal situation, but I think the way that the game is being played now, a lot of rules have taken a lot of the bigger hits and collisions out of the game. and you're seeing, safeties that are at 220 making their way into the box. You're seeing linebackers that are, 220. I think Shaquille Leonard's like sub 220. So it's not so much the normal prototypical 250-pound linebacker, unless you're going like to Baltimore,
Right.
So your size isn't as much of a big deal. I don't think it's as much of a deterrent. I think some old school coaches are going to kind of hold to it, but his play on the field, the results he's had, 6 pick sixes, and SEC records, FBS records. I don't care how much you weigh. You know what I mean? I don't care how much you weigh. I mean, you go back when I was there, Brandon Banks.
Right.
I saw him in the combine. I thought it was a typo when it said 147 pounds. And then I saw him in person, and I was like, okay, so this is actually real. I mean, I've seen him step on the scale, and the man will like fight to get to 150 at that time. And I was like, golly. But he took kicks to the house. That's what you had him there for. So
And then he got every time got called back for a penalty. Every single time.
I know, right? My goodness. Hopefully, I don't think I was the guilty culprit on any of those, fortunately. But I think the weight thing is overblown. If we get to a game where he's having to make tackles time and time again on like big running backs, we're in trouble. You're in a bad place.
Right.
So you're paying this guy to cover receivers and catch passes, catch interceptions, I should say. He's shown to do it in the SEC, which many people say is the highest level of football that there is outside of the NFL. If he can hang going against the Alabamas and the Georgias and in that division, in that conference, I should say, I don't think he's gonna have any problem in the league. I mean, yeah, he'll put on some weight now. He'll probably get into the season, and hopefully maybe by training camp he could be touching 180 as he starts to. That's kind of how I started. I'd start out like 180, 185, and then by the end of the year I'd be about 175. But
well, we don't need to talk about that. Enough time has passed, Anthony, that we can. But my next question for you, before we get into our fan questions, I wanted to get your opinion on this. I've asked this on the past 2 episodes. What's more likely for Washington to get? What's more likely, them to win 10 games or to lose 10 games?
Man, pre-schedule release. I think I had the confidence to say that they would win 10. Post-schedule release, and yeah, we knew the opponents, but I think just the way things laid out, them losing 10 seems like it would have the edge, unfortunately. I still think they could find a way to get into the playoffs, but we don't know what this team's going to look like yet.
Right.
We don't know what any of these teams are going to look like. If you assume that everybody in the division got better in some regard, last year Washington finished 4th. You'd assume they'd still be in that space. Yeah, did they get 2 and 3 wins better than their division opponents? Yeah, I'm not sure. So yeah, I still think they could probably beat a New York, but most likely to lose the 10, unfortunately. But I could see that I need them to find a way to steal a couple from that L side and make them some W's.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the main reasons why Mr. Eric Bieniemy is now here as the offensive coordinator. And now this question that we have was from Andy Lockhart, and I kind of answered it already, but I want to get your opinion on this. Do you see any further free agency moves, or are we waiting until the post-1st June cuts?
I think right now you're probably going to be set. And there may be a few, bodies that come in and out. They're always kind of shuffling. But don't be surprised if something just happens to come up. But if you have those post June 1 cuts, you're going to get a few more names that kind of sprinkle in there. They're always evaluating players. That's one thing that I learned early on in the game is they're always evaluating. I mean, they have the other team's rosters and they know, they're like, hey, if this player on this team becomes available, we're willing to make a move to get this guy, right? And they're like, yeah. So the teams already are thinking that many steps ahead if something were to happen.
John Ridgeway, for example.
See, so things like that happen. I mean, you're always monitoring other rosters and seeing where other players are at. But yeah, I don't think there's really any rush to make a big move right now. The time to get people in would be before OTAs when all that football on the field coaching
Yep.
again starts. Um, that's when I would say maybe they're trying to grab somebody, or they get into OTAs and they realize, hey, this route isn't going to work, right?
Right.
Let's go see who's in the free agency pool to kind of stir up what we got.
Yeah, and speaking of that, it's actually a great point. But Tim Towner in our Discord chat server asked us a question. So, Anthony, now that the draft has been held and the schedule released, predict the NFC division winners. So, the NFC
Man,
North, which is Chicago, Green Bay, Minnesota, and Minnesota. Who am I missing? Green Bay,
Detroit,
Detroit.
Chicago, Green Bay, Detroit, and Minnesota. You know, I feel like the favorite for the North would be Detroit or Minnesota. And I think Detroit had the reason Detroit is because I feel like they were playing a lot of scrappy games
Yep.
last year, and I think they're close to surprising some people and winning some of those games that they lost. In Minnesota, in well, obviously they did it last year. The only scary thing for me is that I think they played in like 12 one-score games or
Yeah.
something like that. It was something ridiculous. And just as easily as they had won them all, they could have easily been on the other side of that. And I mean, I think they're still a good team. I don't think they're going to take too much of a step down, but I don't know if they've made that much of a leap forward. So I'll go on the wild side. I'll go on the wild side. Give me the Lions.
Yeah,
Give me the Lions
and
over
to your
there.
point about the Lions, 2 years ago, in that offseason, we were talking about how many close games they were in, and they could be a team on the rise because we were playing them week 2, saying, look, they're a really good team. They fight in all these games, which is a message to you guys about the Commanders, which is happening for 3 years now, but we don't need to get into that, Anthony. We don't need to get all frustrated here. Now, my next, this is a great question from you, Tim. I really do appreciate you asking it because it's thought provoking. For me, the NFC West, I'm going to look at it and I'm going to say the Seahawks have the best chance to win. I think the Seahawks have put together a very quality roster and building around, and I think that they probably are going to be better suited to make a run for things. The Rams have done a good job. They went and got Stetson Bennett, which is good for them as a backup quarterback with whatever happens with Matthew Stafford. I'm just not convinced that they're a good enough overall team. Then the Cardinals, can we guarantee that Colt McCoy is going to stay healthy enough to be able to hold the boat afloat for Kyler Murray? And I'm not putting all that much stock into it. And the 49ers, obviously the most well-built team in that division, but we don't know what's going on with quarterback. Unless Tom Brady signs with the 49ers and plays this year, which I think is a very real possibility, I think the Seahawks are going to win this division. What do you think, Anthony?
And I'm riding with you on. I would my one argument would be San Francisco. I would almost say I'd be rolling with you on Seattle, but the only thing about San Fran is I just feel like my man Kyle Shanahan always has quarterback troubles.
Yeah.
Just
But he still balls
just
out with them, right? And it's crazy.
yes, he does so much, but it's like we just need somebody to stay healthy.
It's
And
like us.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it kind of just came through Washington and just kind of lingered on. So somebody got to
It
burn some
attached to him.
sage or something like that, man.
It
Like
attached to him like a smog.
whatever the juju is. But I mean, it's just so he has such a talented team out in San Francisco. I mean, I think the most talented roster that he's probably had. And I think that's like because Christian McCaffrey, takes that team up so much with what he can do. But Seattle is scary because they're quickly looking like, that Legion of Boom from times past. They're getting young, hungry guys that can get after the passer, and they got corners that can go and steal the ball out of the air. So it would be one of those two teams, but I'm willing to ride. I'm going to go with the Seahawks too. I'll go with the Seahawks.
Yeah, no disrespect, my boy Trent, but hey, man, you don't wear our colors anymore, so I'm not riding for you as much as I used to be, brother. For this next question in the Discord chat, Anthony, I want to get your opinion on what would you like to happen for the first game with the new owners besides an obvious win?
Man, I would love to see all them tarps off of those top seats, and I would love to see them filled with people. That's what I would love to see. Just the full packed stadium with the energy. I remember my first game. We played Dallas. It was in 2010. It was a night game, and that place was electric. Like, I need that type of energy to show up on week one. All the people that have been at the crib, boycotting for the past however many years, like, come on, bring your ass out to the game. I don't want to see the visiting side full of Arizona Cardinals fans. Like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
I want to see the place. I want to see the place represented, man. I want to see the home fans really get behind. Now, don't get me wrong. Y'all are behind. Y'all are behind the team. Most loyal fans I've ever seen. But I need y'all to show up and make FedEx. You get what I'm saying?
No, I know exactly what you're saying, and you're right, because when, like, let's imagine, like, I don't mean to cut you, like with college, right? You go to a big university, the coach will say you got 60,000 behind you every home game. They're gonna be right, like, you are hyped up because you're going in front of exciting fans. You don't get that here. To your point, is what you're basically saying.
Yeah, I just want FedEx Field to be
Right.
home field advantage. You know what I mean? Like, when people show up, they like, oh fuck, my bad.
No, you're
They're like,
good. I love
damn.
it.
They're like, damn, we got to go to FedEx. Like, golly, them suckers over there in section whatever, 102 or whatever it is,
Keeps talking about
always
my mom,
getting
man.
on you. You know what I mean? Like, and we need that. We need that vibe. I want people to have that feeling. You know what I mean?
No, you're absolutely right. And to speak on that, for what I would say, Tony, what I would like to happen in the first game for the new owners, I really want us to invest in either video or just straight up music form, an actually good historic intro. The one thing about Virginia Tech is the Enter Sandman. It is bloomed into something, right? It has grown into that. We need to set that new standard. Like you said, we need that home field advantage at Washington. We have to get creative. We have to find something that is invigorating for this fan base that people want to be a part of. The Enter Sandman is a spectacle in itself on top of Virginia Tech playing football. People want to go to Lane Stadium just to be a part of that. And that's the kind of thing that Washington truly, truly needs. Just to bring back that fire, essentially, in that stadium, to your point, Anthony, because I wholeheartedly agree, man. It's one of the things that we just haven't had here since I've been alive. Obviously, I've been born in 90. I wasn't really a part of the Super Bowl. I don't claim to be. But, it's been, I grew up disappointed on Sundays. It is what it is. Now, this next question is from Yamzy in our Discord chat. Thank you, Yam. Who do you guys perceive to be the starting offensive line in the all too early to predict, not even through minicamp yet timeline, Anthony?
My goodness. Offensive line. That's such a tough one.
I think Leno's easy to say, right? At left tackle.
Yeah. I think you'd have to pencil him in, but there's definitely going to be somebody that's in play. I wouldn't be surprised if you see him splitting first team reps with somebody.
Really?
When the pads. I just feel like you're going to have to find a way to push him.
Do you have anybody in mind that could? Do you think it's going to be Braden Daniels?
Well, I was thinking about that. I saw a good write-up by Adam Aniba. He sent me one. And I learned that Braden Daniels is from, like, right around the corner from where I grew up. Like, where my mom's house is, he went to school not too far from there at Hebron High School. So he's from my hometown. So shout out to him for that. Hell, is the young Wise kid Daniel Wise on the team still?
Daniel Wise, the defensive tackle? I'm not sure.
Okay, well, he either way, I knew him growing up, but that's neither here nor there. Braden Daniels has a lot of versatility, and I think with some of the other players that they got, there's some versatility that I feel like the coaches are going to use the first few weeks in pads to try to find a match and that's going to work. So who's going to be on starting the offensive line? I'll say this: I'll put Leno in there. I think you got to put maybe a Nick Gates in the middle or somewhere inside. Oh gosh, who's out there on the right? We just got Wiley. Norwell's probably going to be gone. Who we bumping inside? Cosme. And then I just feel like there's going to be one of those rookies that's going to be over there at left guard, and there's going to be another rookie in the mix. As well. So Stromberg and Danny, both of those guys probably going to be in the mix. Maybe Stromberg starts. So that's what I'm going to pick. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I do think that Leno starts at left tackle. I'm not exactly sure how they feel about Leno. Obviously, it could be much worse. He was healthy for 16 games last season. That's really good given the fact of how many injuries we had on the offensive line last year. But I think he starts at left tackle. Left guard, I'm going to put Sam Cosmi in. He playing left tackle in college. Maybe he's more natural on that left side. I would like to slide him in there. Drafting Ricky Stromberg in the third round, I love my boy Tyler Larson. I think that he should have the ability to start, but this is a business. I understand the investment of a third rounder and what that ultimately means. And we saw that with AG. They were saying, "Oh wow, you went and got AG." They let go of AP. We see why, right? You're putting him and you're thrusting him in there so he can play. So I think Stromberg's going to get that starting spot. Then Nick Gates at right guard. I think you went and paid for him. You're putting him in right away. He's not going to be starting on the bench or anything like that. I don't think he's going to start at center. He's going to start at right guard. Then at tackle, you have Andrew Wiley. That's just how I see it playing out. Lord knows anything could happen. Maybe they trade for Jackson Carman tomorrow. Who knows, man? You never know in this industry. And this next question from Tim Towner Anthony. Ron Rivera should be considered to be on a short leash this year, and a slow start could bring a quick end to his well-laid plans. Let's consider the first 6 games. Versus Arizona, at Denver, versus Buffalo, at Philly, versus Chicago, and at Atlanta. What do you predict our record will be after 6 games? And Ron Rivera gets the axe if our record is blank.
That is a very well thought out question.
Tim is he's a genius.
I love that. I love that question. And as you quickly ran through that, I could say I would hope that you're looking at 4-2 after those 6. And I'm assuming you drop the one against Buffalo, you're dropping one against Philly. That's what I'm going with. Now, I would love for them to steal a game against one of those 2 opponents. And I said that I think this team needs to show up and beat the teams that they're supposed to beat. And 4-2 would probably show me that. And then I think that would keep Ron Rivera's job, because if they don't show up and they find themselves in like the 2 and 4 category, 1-5 for sure, 0-6, oh damn right. Maybe you do start having those conversations that you need to go ahead and make a change at that point. And then now you have interim head coach Eric Bieniemy getting his first opportunity to basically audition for the entire year as a head coach, and it makes for a seamless transition. So I don't know. Maybe the script writers are listening. But I mean, I don't know. I will say this: I would much rather it go 4-2 than have to go anything other than that, and then have to go deal with the switch. Even though I'd be happy for Eric Bieniemy, that's just a whole bunch of drama I ain't trying to see. So.
Yeah, and I don't want it to get to that point, Anthony, to what you were saying. I don't want to be that bad to the point where it would be forced, right? But I do understand where Harrison Group has new ownership, why they would make the move and say, Eric Bieniemy here, take over, because we want to be able to see if you are the guy that could carry us over in the new era, right? And that would make sense to me. But ultimately, I think Ron Rivera deserves the respect of walking away on his own, on his own respect. You don't want to throw him out the door with what he's done here, what he did for this organization during the craziness that it was before. I think he deserves more respect than that. That being said, Tim, I think they're going to win all 6 games. Reason being, I don't respect Philadelphia. We walked into Philadelphia last season on primetime football, and we handed them an L when they were undefeated. Not scared of them. We can do it again. They're Super Bowl losers, and typically the following year, Super Bowl losers don't come back very well. I think we're going to win that game against Buffalo. Maybe we'll just get lucky. I'll pray extra hard that day. Hopefully the big man could come through for us that day. Arizona and Denver, I don't respect Sean Payton. I don't at all. I don't think he's very good. He's even though his wife is very good looking and he's hitting that bong on draft night. But besides that, I think that these are very winnable games, and I think that I truly do believe this, guys. I think that Eric Bieniemy is so much more valuable than any draft pick that you could have had in this entire draft. And no disrespect to the prospects, but just the mindset, the aggressiveness, the adaptive ability of his play calling, that's exactly what this team has needed offensively for the past couple of years when they've had good defense. So I think that things could be very good. But look, I'm probably wrong, but whatever. But if they needed to fire Rivera, what would that record be? I'd probably say 1-5. Literally the worst of the worst they could possibly be,
Because I think you have to look at uh, how they lost and what does it look like? Like, do they just come out flat? If they just come out flat on them first two games and get beat, by
Right.
Arizona and Denver, then that water's getting hot on the stove. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If they come out and they play their ass off, win a game, lose a game, play Buffalo tight, beat Philly, like I think I keep that. I think I would still keep the coach. Because you can tell they're fighting in against a superior opponent in some cases, and maybe they come up short barely. But if I see some growth and movement in the right direction, I wouldn't want to make any changes. I'd rather hope for that to continue on moving forward throughout the season.
Yeah, and I really truly hope that like I don't know everything, Anthony, but my wife does. I don't,
Yeah,
but like
absolutely.
I hope that Harrison Company can kind of see and have spent time watching what's been happening here, and they actually do give Ron the time, the ability, along with Jason Wright. I think Jason Wright deserves the ability to be able to work with a good group, to be honest, and because they have done a great job of trying to contain this crazy inferno of toxicity,
Yeah,
and they've done a good
you're
job, and
right.
they deserve the ability to do it on a good term. Is all I'm saying, and I
You're,
feel like they've worked at it.
you are not lying. I mean, I say it time and time again. There's no other head coach, and now you can really say no other person at their position has ever gone through what's been happening in what's inside this
Right.
organization over the past 3 or 4 years. And then you're like, well, they're still 8-8, and I'm like, but you don't understand. The dude was like in a dumpster fire, going through congressional hearings and just ownership changes, just cancer, like so many things at one time. And yes, I know life happens, but my gosh, to hold the boat steady, um, man, that's tough. Like, you just got to give the man his roses. You got to give Coach Rivera some applause for that.
Yeah, no, Jay Gruden was sitting outside of a bar, Indian style, with a co-ed when just dealing with the working under Snyder. You imagine what Jay Gruden would have done if he had to work in those circumstances? He would have lost all of his hair, to be perfectly honest with you. Last question I have for you, Anthony, in this episode, thank you, is from Andy Lockhart in the Discord chat server. What do you think of the schedule from week 6 onward to the bye week? 5 out of 7 games away, then followed by 2 more away games back to back straight after the bye.
Brutal, absolutely brutal. The week 14 bye week, that sucks in and of itself because it's just so far down the line. And I was saying on over there on my show, I'm like, you have to really know how to take care of your body, um, week in and week out, because you have a break that's literally 3 months down the line, three and a half, almost
Right.
4 months away, right? I mean, training camp is already going to wear you down, and just to go that long without having that break is tough. Yes, you have some Thursday nights and a 10-day break here, 10-day break there, but a bye week is different. So injuries kind of scare me. Playing on the road, that's a lot of travel time. That that kind of goes back to injuries, right? Being able to get the most out of maybe limited practice. If coach has to say, "Hey, we're going to take a day off," traveling to Seattle, was it New England and then Seattle is a
Yep.
trip that I had circled too. I was like, luckily it's just to Boston and back, but that Seattle flight, you got to leave like a day earlier, a day or two early, to try to account for
The
getting
time difference.
reacclimated to
Yeah.
time. So it's a brutal stretch. The schedule makers didn't make it easy, but they sure hell made it to be one hell of a story if this works out well for them at the end.
Yeah, like I understand why the NFL has to do this and spreading out the bye weeks because you want to maintain the focus of the fan base for all of them throughout the season. You don't want to put a bunch of them all at once because you're losing the focus a little bit. They want you to really be hampered in all season long. But in my opinion, they should be moving to 2 bye weeks. And that way it makes everything easier on everybody because the big thorn right now is the 1 bye week and you have to spread it out. So somebody's getting screwed. My one thing, Andy, I don't really care because in the NFL, every single schedule is hard. This is what you're going to have to do. And they're adding European games now. It's even going to get worse heading down the line. So you know that those flight times, all that's going to change even worse to the most part. So I'm not really concerned about all that because Giants fans can look at us and say, why are you complaining? Look at our stretch. We have 7 out of 9 that we're away, you know? So I can understand that part.
This is going to be one of those. This could easily be one of those years where, it'll be like one team, maybe two, comes out of the NFC East, right? Like, just the way the schedules are kind of getting played out. Because I had asked Brian Murphy, I had asked him, I'll ask you, if there was any opponent that obviously that the NFC East shares, which one do you think would have the best chance to sweep the division?
Which team would have the best chance to sweep the division?
Yeah, I think I'm thinking you got like Buffalo, you've got Seattle, you've got San Francisco.
I think
the hell
Buffalo is
Miami's
probably
a
the
team
only
in
one.
there.
Miami is also a very good one because they're criminally underrated. They're not, a lot of people aren't giving them enough credit for what they have done, myself included, just because I disrespect not the dude. I don't know. I don't even know why I like Miami. But I think Miami probably would be the best bet besides Buffalo. I think the one thing with Buffalo is Ron Rivera kind of has that big brother mindset with it. I think when we faced them last time, we were just not ready as a team. I think with Eric Bieniemy here, I think that we have the extra piece to be able to go against them. So if anything, to be able to most likely, I'll say Miami, even though it's most likely Buffalo.
Yeah.
What did Brian say?
I felt like shoot. I think he kind of went Buffalo or Miami. I think that was our two. The one that had me intrigued was San Francisco. They lost a lot of pieces, so I'm always interested to see what they put on the field. But I mean, Kyle's always been able to put out good teams. Even lose half coaching staff, still have a good defense. So San Francisco's not going to make it easy, especially because at least two of these teams got to travel out that way.
Right. And the only reason I say about the 2 bye weeks is because then you could like kind of scatter them out so where people aren't getting screwed. You can have one early, one late, or middle. Like kind of just help it out. Like take away a preseason game, just add an extra week for a bye week for all teams, and then you can kind of move the Thursday night games around.
Because this is the first year that there is a team that's going to play 2 back-to-back games in Europe, and that's the Jaguars. They're gonna play their one game in like London or Tottenham, one of them, and then hell, that may be the same stadium. So I apologize. And then they're gonna head to Germany for the next week. So, I mean, couple weeks straight out there in Europe to play these 2 games. You knew it was going to happen at some point as they're trying to make a push to get a team out that way. And I just feel like they're going to slowly add multiple games over. I mean, there's already 6 or 8 games. There's a lot. I think there's 6 matchups out there. Maybe it's 3 and 16. Either way, I feel like they're going to eventually try to have a team be based out in Europe. But trying to figure out how to do that travel wise, I mean, it's going to definitely involve two bye weeks, and I think you're just going to have them play all their home games at once or something like that, or like big chunks and then big chunks over in the U.S. and kind of flip flop like that. That's the only way I could see it working.
Yeah, totally agree with you, Anthony. Real quick, last question I have for you before we get out of here. I know I could hear your kids yelling. I'm sure it's daddy time now. Last question I have for you though, Kyle Shanahan. Let's kind of talk to me about him as a coach, because just looking at him, younger guy, kind of gaining the respect of your peers, especially your players, is hard to do in the NFL when everyone is getting paid a lot of money. What is it about Kyle Shanahan that is it the communication with the players? Is it just strictly playbook and having just great mind in that breath? What makes Kyle so great as a play caller?
I think and you look at it in 2 ways. I know the first thing that he's going to do when he meets the team and addresses his offense is that he pays respect to the players, and it's not. I'm not saying this in a way like you got to bow down to the players, but he's like, hey, what you guys do is tough. It's hard. Like it's a tough game, and I'm behind you, and we're going to work together to put you guys in the best possible situation. So you get guys to buy into that, and they can respect that. You know what I mean? Because there's times where we're out there, you're running routes, and it's hot, and it's 110, and people are yelling, and you drop a punt, and then sweat drops in your eye, and you drop another punt, and everybody's on you. And like that's a difficult situation. So he honors that. He gives you that respect. And I think players are able to, they take that in and that means something to them. And then 2, he has results. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, been to the Super Bowl, put up points as OC all over the league. I mean, you see what he's done, and then to imagine, you're like, okay, well, if I can get on the field, you know, I can put up yards, I can have success in his offense. So you're going to buy into it because you've seen it happen year in and year out.
And Anthony, real quick. If you had to run the 40 right now, what would you run?
Oh man, right now, like today, you're probably looking at like a mid 4.5, maybe a high
Really?
4.4. Well, I'm just saying, like I'm kind of stiff right now. I ran 4 miles earlier today,
Okay.
but I haven't really trained sprinting that much in a while. So I conservatively, I'd say probably like mid 4.5.
So you might be sore tomorrow, is what I'm hearing.
Oh hell yeah, I'd be sore. Good lord. Oh yeah, I'd be very sore. I'd be sore, but I do think if you gave me like a little month, maybe 2 months to train at it, I'll be about probably high 4.3 in no time.
I believe you, Anthony. I truly do. I can't thank you enough for joining me on this. Even my co-host left me out to dry, but it's all good, Anthony. But
Sounds
before I get
good,
out of
man.
here, if you just like to plug your social media handle and also your podcast, so in case anybody watching would like to come follow it.
Oh yeah, man, I appreciate that. I'm over there at Believe in Commanders, the Believe in Commanders show. It's on all streaming platforms. It's on a few spots where they have, free streaming television apps, so you can just look at the Believe Network on all streaming networks that are out there: Google, Spotify. I use the Google one. And I know there's so many more than that. Apple Podcast is out there as well. We got a TikTok too.
There you go.
Believe Commanders. That's on Instagram, TikTok, and on Twitter as well. My handle, Mr. Armstrong 13. That's on Twitter. Come holler at me.
And I believe believe is spelled BLEAV, right?
That is true. BLEAV. Thank you for pointing that out. So you type in Believe Commanders, you'll find the podcast out there.
Anthony, I can't thank you enough, man, for coming on here and saving the day and being able to talk some ball with me, brother. I can't thank you enough. All right, everybody, we'll see you on Thursday. Have a great, safe week, and enjoy this beautiful weather and beautiful news that we got for a week from now. We'll see you guys on Thursday. I'm Kyle, Washington Football. Woo! Thanks, everybody. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Kyle. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching, and if you liked what you saw, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you get notified when anything new is uploaded to the channel. Also, we just launched theburgundyzone.com. You can go there and find all of our latest news, articles, and the latest episodes that are uploaded. Again, we also have the Discord chat server, where all of our VIP folks are in, like Andy Burrows, Scott Hartley, Sergio Martin is in there as well. Don't miss out on the Discord chat server. Go and check that out. Until next time, everybody, Washington Football. Woo!